Oh, pirates, yes, they arrive by, sold out to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit, my hand was made
strong defecated on the water, just pell-mell, that behaved in a way that exposed you to hazards, discomfort, and flies, and vermin. You would know how to evacuate your neighbor. But these corporations do it with different kinds of noxious pollutants, a kind that can be described a silent, cumulative form of violence. And that's what we should call pollution. It's too charitable a word. Silent, cumulative forms of violence, cancer, genetic damage, respiratory diseases, and so forth. We would have a framework of evaluation in very human and understandable terms. And so I use phrases like, these hospitals, they push these pregnant women through in less than 24 hours because it's not cost effective for the hospital. They deliver the child out the door. So I accuse these hospitals of having attention deficit disorder. Or the drug companies that steal with their high prices and all their subsidized research and development by the American taxpayer. They are kleptomaniacs. And people begin to relate. We have to personalize the impersonal corporate behavior. The second is to redefine productivity. That means that you don't measure economic progress by the seller side only without evaluating the benefits to the buyer side. And so in our country we have indicators for economic progress. They're all seller indicators, seller yardsticks. So they say, well, the auto industry sold more cars this year than last. Economic progress, higher GDP. The drug companies sold more, economic progress, higher GDP. Well, do we ask, well, since they did sell more cars, is it easier and safer and more efficient to get from point A to point B on the ground? If it isn't, they have failed. It is not progress. It is more congestion and more antagonism to public transit expansion and more pollution and more death. If the drug companies sell us more drugs, do we evaluate, are the patients better off? Are they becoming addicted? Are they becoming dependent? Are they using drugs that have side effects which require more drugs, which have side effects which require more drugs? If that's the case, the drug industry is not progress. The consumer yardstick is the evaluation. That gives us power. That means that if we control our yardsticks, we control public policy discussion. We control government policy. We control the way we elevate our own expectations. And if we let the vendors establish the yardstick, technologically stagnant, large, absentee control from where the consumers are, thousands of miles away, hierarchical, authoritarian type organizations, increasingly a couple of hundred of them, dominate so much of the world's GDP directly and indirectly, finance, manufacture, natural resources, etc. If we let them measure the yardsticks, they will control us. It's just like these scholastic aptitude tests. Did you all take these multiple choice tests? These testing companies, like the Educational Testing Service, which we exposed in Princeton, New Jersey, once they develop the yardstick for intelligence, they control them. And they have the questions, A, B, C, D, none of the above, and you get the score, and you internalize this phony measure of your intelligence as a measure of what you can be like in life. And breaking that grip means breaking their power to define intelligence in their crude, automated, standardized test, multiple choice manner. The second thing we do, we take it from our revered Indian lore in the United States, the Iroquois Confederacy, which in the 15th and 16th century developed this ethic that whatever they do, they should take into account the effect on the 7 generations forward. And that's called the 7-generation yardstick. I just think of that foresight for what our colonial predecessors called savages. They called them savages. In our Declaration of Independence, these people were called savages on the way to being exterminated. And that's, of course, a way of talking in modern language of life cycle analysis. You life cycle the product. You take a nuclear plant, you don't just say, well, it's producing electricity. You don't just say, there's the uranium line, and you have uranium tailings, and you have sick miners, and you have yellow cake, and you have fuel rods that are fabricated, and they're put into the nuclear plant, and you have the containment, and then you produce electricity. Oh, and then you have radioactive waste that has to be transferred by truck and car to some storage for a couple 100,000 years. You don't just say, oh, isn't that nice? You say, isn't there a simpler, more efficient, more respectful of future generations technology that can boil water? That's what nuclear power is for. Boiling water to produce steam. So by being disciplined by our descendants, by posterity, we become less selfish. We become less greedy. We have different ways to evaluate the powerful institutions that have institutionalized greed and selfishness and short-sightedness. Another way we use is we redefine violence. The power structure in any society does not define major forms of preventable violence that accrue to their activity, that start with them, due to criminal behavior, negligent behavior, indifferent behavior, ignorant behavior. Therefore, in our country, the two major forms of highly publicized and resource-rich preventable violence is terrorism and street crime. We'll spend trillions of dollars on terrorism because it's big business. It's our jobs program. We have guards and sentinels, inspectors, testers, people who feel you up at airports. We have detection equipment. We have more weapon systems. They have to build another aircraft carrier to go against Al-Qaeda. It's rather a mismatch. But it's become a big business. And so there's a lot of focus on terrorism. The other focus is street crime. Now let's look at street crime. 14,000 homicides in the United States last year. That's very high per capita compared to Sweden, of course. But compare other categories of preventable crime that come from corporate behavior that get very little attention in political campaigns, very little budget enforcement, cops on the corporate crime beat. 58,000 Americans die every year from workplace-related diseases and trauma. That's official government figure. 65,000 die from air pollution, preventable. 100,000 die from negligence in hospitals, preventable. 45,000 die from not having health insurance in order to get diagnosis and treatment. That's 800 a week, 115 today. Okay. All these are preventable, but they are not subjected to public debate, to campaigns of politicians, to sessions. They're not subjected to the intelligent remedy. They're not subjected to public policy correction. They're not even leftovers. They're not even greedy though. There is no Arlington cemetery for these people. They die in silence from cancer and lung disease and liver illness, etc.